The morning of September 11th, 2001, began as a routine Tuesday. Commuters poured into Manhattan offices, flights took off on schedule, and society operated without disruption. That routine broke at 8:46 a.m. A passenger jet struck the North Tower. On the ground, thousands watched the smoke rise, initially assuming it was a catastrophic aviation accident. But 16 minutes later, as news cameras captured the scene live, a second aircraft banked sharply and flew directly into the South Tower. In that moment, the narrative of an accident vanished. This was a deliberate act of war, and the geographic safety that protected the American mainland for decades was gone. Within hours, nearly 3,000 people were dead. A thick gray ash settled over lower Manhattan. As the towers fell, a communications vacuum emerged, leaving citizens to search the debris for missing loved ones, while the government struggled to grasp the scale of the crisis. In Washington, military and intelligence leaders faced a terrifying reality. A shadowy, stateless group had successfully bypassed the world's most advanced defense systems. To understand how this failure happened, investigators had to look backward. They had to trace the path of the attackers through the geopolitical conflicts of the Cold War. The evidence quickly centered on Al-Qaeda and its founder, Osama bin Laden. Bin Laden's rise began in the 1980s, when the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan to install a communist government. To counter the Soviets, the United States provided massive funding and weaponry to the Afghan resistance fighters, known as the Mujahideen. Bin Laden was a key figure in these U.S.-backed networks, using his wealth and newfound combat experience to build a logistical base for foreign fighters. When the Soviet Union finally withdrew, these fighters didn't simply disband. They kept the weapons, the training, and the logistical hubs built with Western support, eventually redirecting that infrastructure toward a new target, the United States itself. In the 1990s, bin Laden's focus turned to the presence of American troops in Saudi Arabia and Western involvement in Muslim nations. He began to see the U.S. military as an occupying force that had to be driven out. Al-Qaeda's leaders believed that a single, spectacular strike on American soil would provoke a massive overreaction, dragging the U.S. into a costly war and inspiring a global extremist movement. The plot took years to execute. Operatives moved into the U.S., enrolled in suburban flight schools, and lived completely undetected. This was a strategic operation that relied on patience, exploitation of visa systems, and the assumption that no one was looking for a threat from within. On September 11th, the plan went into motion. 19 hijackers boarded 4 different flights, coordinating their takeover within minutes of each other. While the towers burned in New York, a third plane impacted the Pentagon, striking the physical headquarters of the American military. Aboard the fourth plane, United 93, the passengers fought back. Their resistance forced the hijackers to crash in a Pennsylvania field, likely saving the U.S. Capitol or the White House from destruction. By mid-morning, the intense heat from the jet fuel caused the structural failure of both World Trade Center towers. The towers were gone. Their collapse signaled the end of a decade of relative peace, forcing the United States to prepare for a response that would span continents and decades. The U.S. military soon invaded Afghanistan, where they toppled the Taliban government and began a decade-long search for Al-Qaeda's leadership. In 2011, intelligence officers finally located bin Laden, not in a cave, but in a fortified compound in Abbottabad, Pakistan. During a secret raid authorized by President Obama, U.S. forces breached the compound and killed bin Laden. The architect of the attacks was dead, but the changes his operation had triggered were now a permanent part of the global landscape. The ease of 20th century air travel disappeared. It was replaced by the modern security checkpoint, a global system of screening, watch lists, and surveillance that now begins long before a passenger reaches the gate. Beyond the airports, governments expanded their surveillance capabilities, passing new laws to monitor digital communications in an effort to identify threats before they could mobilize. In New York, the empty space left by the towers became a permanent memorial, with 2 massive reflecting pools marking where the buildings once stood. September 11th created a hard boundary in the history of the 21st century. It took a single morning to set in motion the new global wars, sweeping surveillance laws, and rigid security protocols that now define the relationship